Hello, everybody. We're going to get started right away because I know we have a lot to get to today. I still see a lot more people coming in through the waiting room, but I wanted to say hello, good morning, good afternoon, and welcome back to Master Advisor. Today is March 24th. This is episode 49. We're going to be speaking about scaling a luxury agency today. There's a lot we want to get to, including tracking performance, hiring, and more. But first, I do want to make a few announcements. As always, speaker review is going to be the best way to watch today's session. And the chat on the bottom right is going to be open as we go along today. So if you have any questions or comments or tips or concerns, please drop them in there. And I'm going to do my best to grab them as we go along today. I also want to thank everyone for joining us on our last session a couple weeks ago with Stacey Acri. We really did get to a lot in that session, including how to fire your client, which was a big topic, and how to manage your client list a little better. That full session is available now on demand on our YouTube channel if you didn't catch it or if you want to rewatch it. If you're on our YouTube channel, if you head over there, you can always subscribe. That helps us a whole lot on our side of things to continue growing this channel and bring you these sessions every couple weeks. And I also want to announce that we are very lucky to have a sponsor of today's session, which is Explorer Journeys. I want to welcome Saul Fonseca, the head of sales of the USA East and the Americas at Explorer, to tell us a little bit about Explorer and to share his viewpoint with everyone. So welcome, Saul.
Thanks, Dan. And give me a quick nod. You can hear me, right?
Yep.
All right.
We're
awesome.
good.
Well, I just want to just say thank you to everybody for joining today's session, and thank you for having us as a sponsor. Really excited to introduce Sarah in a bit here, but very happy to introduce you to a bold new vision for ocean travel, Explorer Journeys. And Explorer Journeys actually represents the ambition. The family that own us, the Aponte Vago family, sought out to create a very transformative luxury ocean travel experience and brand that is going to redefine the luxury cruise category for the discerning traveler. We're transforming the classic luxury cruise to ocean escapes that inspire exploration in all of its forms, all with a spirit of vibrant, cosmopolitan, and relaxed European luxury. And you'll notice we're all about our nomenclature here at Explorer Journey. So you won't hear me say or hear any of us say cruises, because we really don't think of ourselves as a cruise line, but rather a provider of journeys. So we really are building a vibrant, cosmopolitan European luxury lifestyle and family-owned brand, headquartered in the heart of Swiss hospitality in Geneva, Switzerland. So we have the gold thread of Swiss luxury running through our brand. Explorer Journeys will really set ourselves apart by truly delivering on space, actually the highest space to guest ratio in the industry when we launch, privacy, choice, and design, and of course, our destination experiences. We will go halfway around the world, our first year of sailing, of journeying, and we will start in the Mediterranean. We will work our way through the United Kingdom and Northern Europe. We will then do some Iceland and Greenland journeys, making our way over to Canada and New England just in time for fall foliage. Then we're transiting down the eastern seaboard into the Caribbean just in time there for the festive season. So think November and December 2023. We continue south into South America, making our way over to Rio for Carnival. Then we're coming back and over through the canal, transiting over to the western side of the US, and we would do round trip Hawaii from Vancouver. And then May 2024, our second ship comes out, Explorer 2. So this is a 4-ship commitment by the Aponte Vago family. So Explorer 1 officially set sail May 31st, 2023. And then every May thereafter through 2026, we'll have new ships coming out. So we talked a little bit about the ship and what we're building, but honestly, what we're most excited about talking about and always really putting first and foremost is this community, the advisor community. So we have an unwavering commitment to the global travel advisor community. We've designed an industry-leading and industry-first programs and tools to protect the health and longevity of the advisor community. And what we've done is create an industry-first rolling commission program, whereby we are paying your commissions upon any and all funds received So even though we don't set sail until May of 2023, if you make a booking today, within 21 days, we are paying you your full commission, even though, again, we don't set sail until 2023. Those commissions are quite handsome. We're paying 18% commission for all of our preferred partners. We do not have any NCFs, so no non-commissionable fares. In addition to that 18% booking commission, we're also paying 10% commission on any add-ons that our advisors are placing on bookings leading up to the time of sailing. So I'm not going to take up much more of your time. I know we're all here to see Sarah today, and to take a little inspiration from Sarah, and actually straight from one of her company's core values, which is always be learning. Yes, Sarah did a little digging. I actually want to end by saying I would encourage all of you to please get registered on our Explorer Travel Advisor Center to learn much more about Explorer journeys and stay up to date on everything that we've got going on in our world. You can find that by visiting our website, explorerjourneys.com, and then on the upper right-hand corner, clicking on where it says Travel Advisors and getting connected with us. And with that being said, we truly believe in the power of video, and we have a short video to show you. And I want to thank all of you for your time. Go ahead, Dan.
Thank you. All right. Well, thank you, Saul. Thank you to Explorer. I know we've met a number of the members of the team there, and I'm sure a lot of our advisors are super excited. Someone's asking for the URL for the video in the chat, and Tom can maybe send that over. But I want to get to our guest today because I know, like you mentioned, Saul, that's why a lot of people are here. So my guest for the next 40 minutes or so, 45 or so, is going to be Sarah Groen of Bell Bly Travel Design. Sarah's here to talk about scaling a business, and I'm going to let her introduce herself and tell us a little bit about her background, but I know she's experienced both inside and outside of the travel industry, including positions in investment banking, private equity, venture investing, and at Uber. In 2021, she was named Virtuoso's most innovative travel advisor, something we're going to talk about a little bit. But yeah, I want to welcome Sarah to the program today and say thank you so much for lending us your time this week.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so for everyone who might not be familiar with you, I was hoping you would give us a little bit about yourself, your agency, and how you got into the business.
Yeah, I'm like, do you want the long story or the short story? But just kind of quickly, like you said, I didn't come from a traditional travel industry background. I'm from Texas. I'm sitting in Houston right now. Was a finance major and came to Houston right out of undergrad to be an investment banker and invest in private equity companies. And then it was like, finance is cool, but I'm not sure, it's not exactly for me. I don't have enough time to travel. I'm working all the time. But I still didn't know what I wanted to do. So I went back and got my MBA at Stanford. And after that is when I really started getting into more entrepreneurial focused things. And I liked all the jobs that I had. I did invested in energy software startups, worked in an energy tech company, and then was recruited by Uber to be one of the first executives to help launch Uber Eats. And they were all great, but at a certain point it was like, okay, I cannot work 80 hours a week, 90 hours a week for somebody else. If I'm going to work that hard, it's going to be for myself. So that's when I decided I was ready to be an entrepreneur. I had enough business experience, had enough experience managing a team, growing. Like at Uber, we grew like crazy, right? Like 10% per week. That was like the baseline. You wanted to beat that every week. But didn't know anything about the travel industry, had no idea this was a career I could pursue. I knew travel was essentially the only thing I was passionate about, but I kept trying to find my passion in other things, like other things I could invest in or businesses I could build or buy or franchise. So it's doing all that research and did some investing, but nothing that took up a bunch of my time. And I started planning trips on the side for my business school classmates. So, two in particular who are CEOs of tech companies that you've probably heard of. One of them has like billboards, and I just took his credit card and I booked his hotels on hotels.com. I knew nothing about like what commissions were or any of that. And I just charged them fees and planned their trips. And meanwhile, nothing else I was working on worked out because I wasn't passionate about it. And I thought, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there is a way to make a career in this. And I did about 5 minutes of research, and I found my then and current host agency, Brownell Travel, and was like, oh, there's a thing called a travel advisor. Maybe I should figure out what this is. So I like to say I went pro after that.
Yeah, I mean, that's great because we hear so many different people with different backgrounds, and yours is particularly different from a lot of the other advisors we've spoken to. There seems to be a thread of a lot of family-owned businesses sort of getting passed down in this industry. There seems to be a lot of people, second career people, which kind of is what you are for us. But to come from an MBA background, to come from a background in investment banking, I think it's something super unique to the travel industry.
Yeah, and I suppose it's helped in a lot of ways too.
Yeah,
So
I'm sure we're going to speak about that today too. But I do want to ask you something before we get into the topic, and that's where from my conversations with a lot of advisors and a lot of hosts and things like that, there seems to be a need to attract people in this industry. And because of your background, and you seem to have a lot of different options before you enter travel. I'm just curious. I mean, what really made the industry attractive to you? Was there anything that I mean, you said it was a 5 minute research bit you did, but was there anything that really got you dead set on this kind of career?
Um, it's a good question. I don't think I have the exact answer you're probably looking for. But I think, I had always been passionate about travel. And I think with millennials and even probably more so with Gen Z coming after us, that being passionate about what you do makes a much bigger difference nowadays than it did in the past. And I had just always been sort of just working so hard at somebody else's dream that when I finally found out, oh, maybe I can make a career in something I'm passionate about, I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna give it a try. I actually said, I'm gonna do it for 6 months. Sorry, Brownell. and then it'll probably fail and then I'll go do something else, but I'll give it a shot. And luckily, because I had the business experience, I had experience working at Uber where we had amazing product market fit, like what we had to sell, our service flew off the shelves. I had also worked at another company where we did not have good product market fit, and I knew how that felt. So just within the first few months, I knew this was a service people needed and people wanted, and that like if I wanted to dedicate myself to it, I could grow in it. So I think it was just that it was my personal passion. I've been to 100 countries and all 7 continents, and started traveling when I was 14 or 15.
Yeah, I think that's something. I know I mentioned how unique your background is, but that's probably something you do share with a lot of the advisors is the love for travel. I don't think there's anyone selling travel in this industry who's not going to have that. But so I want to sort of I want to get as much information out of you as I can today, and I know the advisors on the call will want to as well. So again, if you have a question for Sarah, please drop it in the chat, and we'll grab it if it's appropriate and if it's something I think adds to the conversation. But Sarah, you mentioned you were going to do this for the 6 months starting out, and I'm curious. I don't expect sort of a whole business encyclopedia from you, but like, how did those first 6 months go? How did you start attracting clients? I know you probably had a Rolodex from your other career, but how did you start attracting clients, and how has your business sort of grown since those first 6 months?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I do think, it did have a lot to do with my network when I started, right? So that you can't ignore that, right? You can't come in right out of college, coming from someplace where you don't know anybody who travels and expect to grow the same way somebody who did investment banking, private equity, tech, like works, like went to school with people who have sold their companies for $20 million, $100 million, right? So I did have that base, but I didn't rely on it. So I think there's lots of things that other people can do, right? So I had that base. I immediately jumped in. I think the first thing is don't have imposter syndrome, right? Like if you're going to do it, do it. Tell everybody that's what you do, announce it on every channel that you're in, and don't worry about it failing, because if you do, you probably will fail, is probably the first thing. So I jumped into it with both feet was the first thing. And then one thing I think I did well was I really narrowed down quickly on who my best client was, right? So I had my network, and then the people who came to me who we like jived and they liked the service I offered and they liked what I did and they liked how we worked. I was like, who are those people? So those people were entrepreneurs, specifically executives, finance people, venture capital investors, like very specific types of people, really busy people still in the prime of their career, who didn't have a lot of time. So then I went and I changed all of our marketing stuff and just our total focus. Like you can even on the front page of our website, it says we serve entrepreneurs and successful entrepreneurs and executives. It doesn't mean we're not going to work for a doctor or a lawyer when they come in, but I know that those types of people are my easiest sale. So when they do come in the door, it takes me less time to get them on board. It takes me less time to get them to be excited about the trip because they inherently trust me because of my background and the way that we work together. So I really focused on my marketing on that sort of narrowed down client, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And that's really where we sort of feel comfortable, and we double down on it now. Yeah, I mean, I can list a few other things, but I'll let you jump
Well,
in.
I mean, I think that's, I know we're talking about growing a business, and I think that is, it seems to be an important part of your success is you found who your ideal client is. And we've had people on this series who talk about that a little bit. I remember Kristen Perry called it an avatar. She sort of found out, she called it, yeah, an avatar as who her ideal client is. And like you mentioned, started targeting marketing and targeting sales to that segment. And that seems to be something that is incredibly important for your business.
Mhm. Yeah, and in the early days, I did some. So in addition, I mean, marketing is great, but selling is better. But also, I just love selling. I'm a salesperson. But so I did some proactive selling. So I created an email that I really liked at the time. This was after I had done it for a little bit, and I had some customer successes. And I crafted this email that was just like, hey, just FYI, this is what I'm doing now in case you hadn't seen or heard. These are some of the things that we've done for our clients recently, because I knew that I had been in this world and had started to travel in this way, but had never used an advisor before, didn't really know it existed, obviously, based on the story I told before. So I wanted other people to know that it's not just about saving time, and it's not just if you can't figure out the internet, and it's not just if you're not an experienced traveler. So I gave very specific examples. Like I helped this client achieve this. This client got access to this experience they couldn't otherwise. This one saved $1,000. This one XYZ. And I picked people from my network who I had not yet heard from, and I specifically emailed them. And I kept track of it. So I have those like old spreadsheets somewhere, and it was actually a pretty good hit rate. Like a good portion of those those people became clients. And then of course, then they refer. I think it's also important early on to try to get the right clients early on, because that's where your snowball starts to grow from.
Okay. And yeah, you mentioned referrals. I mean, is your system with referrals, again, because we've had so many people talk about the different ways they do referrals. Do you have a formal system for referrals for your client? Do you ask them specifically maybe at the end of the trip at a roundup or a finishing conversation to tell your friends? Like, is it informal? Is it formal? Is it something else?
It's a good question. We should all have that. For us, that's sort of the thing that falls off the plate when we're really busy, but we do. We build it into the itineraries. But for me, it's not just referrals to other people. Like, when is your next trip? When are we starting on that? And we're really big on that. So we're with all of our top clients, we're not even when they get back from a trip, but sort of at the end of the year, asking them, what are your plans for the next 2 years? And having a call with them and starting to say, okay, these are the 3 trips we're going to start planning now, 2 for 2022 and 1 for 2023, because it's kind of more urgent or less availability or whatever it is. So we do have a pretty robust program around like reselling to our existing clients. And then I do have a kind of a referral program. I have a scholarship at University of Texas where I went to undergrad for study abroad. And for any existing client who refers a new client who travels, we donate more money to that
Oh,
scholarship.
wow.
So like there are some things that are in place. We're just not like, pushing it a
Yeah.
lot now.
Yeah, I mean, but that's interesting. The sort of charity component is something we haven't heard before on this series or anything. I don't think any advisors mentioned to me in my career in the industry, but I think that is super unique.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of advisors are doing that now with their bookings with the situation in Europe too.
Okay.
Probably an opportunity for a lot of advisors. Yeah, but I want to concentrate again because I know I sometimes have a tendency when I'm speaking to people to get off topic a little bit. I want to talk about growth and scaling for growth and sort of figuring out the best way to grow an agency. But first, I know you when we had our initial call, you mentioned sort of the rate you were growing, and I don't expect you to get into specifics, but can you just talk about sort of how your business is growing, and what kind of issues and what kind of problems that presents to you to solve in order to continue with that growth?
hmm Yeah, I didn't pull numbers. I'm like, I think there's a couple of people on this call who could probably pop in and tell you my exact growth numbers. No, but I think so 2019. So keep in mind too, for people who had like much more experienced businesses coming into COVID, 2019 was my first full year in business, right? So it was still an early year, and you would have in the early cycle of companies' lives, like you want to see really steep growth curves, right? So from 2019 to 2020, we still grew a little bit, 10, 15%, I would say. 2021 was about, depending on which number you look at, it's between 150 to 230% over 2019. So 2021 came back in a big way. And I think this year we're on track to double, I think. Yeah.
Okay.
So we have grown pretty rapidly, and we kept a pace, I think, during COVID. And in terms of how we grew, I think there's two major components. I mean, there's consistency in like doing what you do and doing what you do well, and whether that's marketing, sales, running really great trips, getting your clients to be happy with you and coming back, right? But it's also in hiring. So I think at least for my peers, I was one of the first people to hire my first assistant. And she was amazing and has been with me the entire time. And I held on to her for like dear life during COVID. It's like, she's not going anywhere, because when it comes back, we're going to need that. And then when things started to come back, I went on a little bit of a hiring spree. I hired like 3 more people. And I tried to hire in advance of things like coming back from COVID, and that really helped too.
All right. So I want to talk about that hiring specifically because you mentioned it's an important part, and I know that a lot of advisors now, with sort of the boom we're experiencing and hopefully will continue to experience, is something they're thinking about too. But we have a couple of comments in the chat. I promised I would get to them, so I will. Yeah, Michelle just wanted to know where you're located in Sarah's in Houston, Texas. And then we have a comment from Lauren about a membership fee, which I know fees are a big topic. I promise we'll get to them later in the call, but fees seem to come up every one of these conversations, and we're going to talk about it. But I want to talk about hiring and firing first, or hiring more specifically. Sorry. So you've mentioned how important hiring is, and I'm curious if you have a philosophy when it comes to hiring when you're growing. Is there a good time where it's time to hire, time to bring on another expense, or is it sort of a leap of faith for you?
Mm-hmm. I think in the beginning it was, I wouldn't call it a leap of faith, but I just used sort of like instinct and gut and like what I had learned in prior jobs. And it was just sort of a feeling. I was like, okay, I could tell, that I'm being held back now at a certain point. So it was more kind of instinct and feeling.
Sarah, were you held back? Like you mentioned being held back, but was there a specific part of your business that you had felt held back in? Like you mentioned sales. Was that the part of your business where you felt like you could be doing more if you had other stuff taken off your plate?
Yeah. So for us, I do want to talk about like bottlenecks and how to think about that in your business. But for me, that was actually operating the trips has almost always been the bottleneck.
Okay.
I feel like I could always, but salespeople are always like really confident in their own sales ability. So maybe I'm not, but in my mind, I'm like, I could double or triple sales if I had, more people. um, but in terms of the like knowing when, okay, so then this year I got really sick about not having any metrics to track about when that would be, or even just how to take care of my team. And I asked all around and I couldn't find any advisors that I knew. So if anybody has a system, I'd love to chat with you after this, who knew how to track their capacity. And I had, done private equity investing where we invested in industrial companies. And if you didn't know your capacity, like you would get fired. Like no CEO can run a company if they don't know their capacity. So I just created like a simple capacity tracker, right? So I'm tracking like the number of hours my team is putting in per week, but then specifically the number of hours they're putting on in client work versus the other kind of things that they do. I track my number of hours in client work because if I'm CEO and sales, I shouldn't be doing that much. So if mine are creeping up, that means we're getting over capacity. Okay. And also put in there some metrics around how many days it was taking us to get from the client fee to the client proposal. And then the number of trips on our departure list, both hotel only and FIT. And so now I have like pretty good feeling, right? Like I can tell right now we're over capacity. So we're at a red line. The number of trips we have on our departure list is too many for the number of people we have. So I either need to pull that down or I need to hire again. So I'm really thrilled with just like, it's a super simple Google spreadsheet, right? But I'm thrilled with that because it's, you may think it doesn't have value, but when you look at that every week, you can see the fluctuations. I can see when I pull my sales hours back, the team's a little bit like more chill, they're not like dying. And so now it's going to be a little bit more metrics based going forward in terms of when to hire.
Okay, so we have a question in the chat. Speaking of metrics, and again, if this maybe doesn't fall into the conversation, I think we can skip it. But I'm going to ask it. Michael just wants to know if you can share some metrics in specifics. So, like, what is the real number, or what is the real categories of things, or I guess specific numbers that will send you those kind of signals?
I just listed them all off, all the ones that are in the capacity tracker anyway.
Yeah.
So those, there are some other metrics that we track that don't necessarily have to do with capacity, but we do get a client feedback score from every trip. So I know we want that to be at a certain level. I mentioned days from fee to proposal, but we also, so that's, kind of, for me, that's a client happiness metric as well. I don't want our clients waiting forever to get the proposal that they paid for when they paid us their fee. But we also track days from the proposal to when they deposit, because that's like my sales metric, right? That's like days, that we don't really make money until the client's going on the trip. So we track that. Because always be learning is one of our main core values. We track number of webinars per month per team member. So there's also some in there that are just like everyone on the team, in my perspective, needs to have something that they're tracking, a KPI that they're working towards. So, different levels have different things that they need to track too.
So you mentioned all this, and again, we haven't had this kind of analytical discussion, I don't think, with any advisors. And maybe part of that's my issue, but it seems just with your background, you're making decisions based on data specifically, which is obviously something that's added to the success you've had in your business. But I want to talk about when you're hiring people. We touched on this a little earlier in the week, but do you have a position that's best to hire for when those metrics are suited for it? I mean, do you have a philosophy when you're looking for specific people to fill specific roles in your agency?
Yes, I definitely have a philosophy on that. I think the specific role is going to be different for everybody in everybody's company. But if you think about the life cycle, the value chain of your business, right? So you have awareness over here. That means like, do people know that you're a travel advisor and that you book travel, right? So awareness, sort of marketing, and then sales. And then you have everything from when a client decides they want to work with you to when their trip is done, whatever phases you break that up into, call it operations phase. And then you have what we kind of talked about before, the like referrals or coming back for another trip with you. So if you think of that as your value chain, for me, where you need to hire and where I look to hire is where your bottleneck is. Okay. Right? So my very first hire was in operations because my bottleneck was I don't have enough time to do a good job on the trips for the clients that I've already brought in. And then that was our bottleneck for a while. And it is again right now. But at a certain point, and this is like, it's okay to have bottlenecks. It's going to happen as you grow a business. Okay. But your bottleneck's going to pop up in different places on that chain every single time you have one. So then the next bottleneck was in sales, which is funny because I love sales. That's my thing. Right.
Yeah.
Well, yes, I could get on the phone and do a good job on sales, but I didn't have enough time to do all the proper sales things like follow up, like move people down the funnel. Did they fill out the form but not schedule a Discover call? Well, I need to follow up with them. Did they schedule a Discover call, have a great conversation with me, and then never send in their credit card information? I need to follow up with them. And I wasn't able to do any of that because I didn't have time. So I was sort of my own bottleneck in sales. So I hired someone who we call, like, she's client relations. So she helps there in sales, and she also helps with this, the end of the cycle where she brings them back in. So she sees what trips they're thinking about planning next. She helps us put together our sort of like portfolios for our top clients where we're looking out a couple of years in advance. So I hired her because she sort of helped me with that bottleneck at the time. And now we're back bottlenecked again at operations.
Okay. All right.
But someone may have a bottleneck in marketing. You may be like, I have all the time in the world to plan trips because I'm super efficient and way better at that than you are, Sarah, which is probably true. Maybe you're a better travel advisor, but you don't have anything coming in marketing wise. Then maybe that's your bottleneck.
Yeah, we've actually had that conversation, the marketing bottleneck conversation before, and it was, I think it came from someone's love of marketing, to be honest. But I did want to ask about something that when we spoke about earlier in the week, because this is a trend in the industry and it's something that you maybe are not participating in right now. But ICs versus like a hiring for your agency. You mentioned earlier in the week you don't really work with ICs, correct?
Yeah, I just haven't sort of gone down that rabbit hole yet. So for me, it's because also that's been my bottleneck hasn't been bringing in clients, right?
Yeah.
But I think it could be a great way to grow for some people, but we just haven't gone down that road yet.
Okay. And then do you have any advice? Because I know you've done a lot of hiring on the hiring process, on sifting through candidates. I mean, you've obviously had a tremendous amount of success in the industry without a travel background. And I'm curious, is that something you consider when you're hiring? Do you look for people with travel industry backgrounds, or do you look for backgrounds with the specific backgrounds, like you mentioned before, where you have that bottleneck?
Um, I'm pretty, right. I mean, we all own our own company, so we all have our own quirks. Like my thing is I want my team to be people I want to hang out with and like a really good close-knit team. So we probably filter on a lot of different things. So for me, it's not quite as important if they have travel industry experience, although I've been thinking about that a lot lately and we just haven't done that yet. But so far what we've done is just kind of put out a job description there and a really, really detailed job description and see what we get. And for the most part, the candidates who have come through are ones who have tangential travel industry experience because they love travel. So that's first, right? They have a passion around it. And then it's also nice that they understand it's a 24/7 industry. So that I think is a really nice to have. After that, for me, it's more about their specific skills, like for the travel coordinator, assistant travel coordinator, right? Are they extremely detail oriented? Do they communicate in a really great way? A lot of my hires are internationally based, so my English has to be really at a high level for them. So, so the first thing, I don't do interviews first, right? We do an application process, which actually includes a video a lot of the time, which is a great English screen for us. And then we do an exercise. So we have them do 2 to 3 different things they might do as a travel coordinator in the business and an attention to detail test. And then we have a sort of a quantitative score for everybody. And then the top ones, me and my lead travel designer, we both interview for fit. So that's kind of how we're doing it now. Now we may hire people with travel experience in the future when that becomes our bottleneck, when the higher level stuff becomes a bottleneck. But at the moment, we're hiring mostly coordinators and then growing them internally.
Okay. So we have a question from Michelle in the chat. She says she does see that your background is super unique in her comment, but she had a question just about your day-to-day sort of work in your agency. She says you have employees. She wants to know if you have a storefront for your business or you're totally virtual, and how are your employees' hours? Or are they working 8 hours a day, or is it something completely different?
Mm-hmm. No storefront, we're completely virtual. Even my clients in Houston, I don't meet with. But I'm just very like operate, and I'm like, well, it would take me 30 minutes to get there and 30 minutes back. And that's like time I could be doing on something else. So no storefront and then also because my whole team is completely virtual as well and has been since pre-COVID. So that's that part of the question. And then in terms of the number of hours, the team is like the core team is all full-time and they do work 8-ish hours a day. For me, I just decided I'm not paying hourly and I'm not tracking, although we do track our time for other reasons. I want to know like which clients are the least profitable and that kind of stuff. So we do track our time, but I don't look at it very often. I just pay, like twice a month or whatever it is. And everybody's like, the agreement when you come work for me is you're trying to work 40 hours a week. If you work 45, like, sorry, like that's great. Like you're going to do that, but don't do that so often that I don't know. And then I'm not thinking about either hiring or reducing sales, and don't work 35 hours a week so often that you could be doing more things for the company. So I kind of am hiring that type A person who wants that lifestyle, wants to be salaried. And our target is 40 hours a week. I don't want anyone overworked. I don't want anyone underworked. And then we all just kind of like, we're really close, even though we're remote. So we kind of operate on that basis.
All right. So, I mean, Michelle had a follow-up and we'll grab it. She just like, so I guess she just wants clarification. I mean, do you don't track your employees' time at all? Is it just because of your relationship with them and because of communication with them is probably the more appropriate term, that when what kind of hours they're working? And I mean, you just seem to have it just seems to be a trust in your employees because of how you vetted them when you're hiring and the data you track, that you don't really see a need to track their time.
Yeah, so we do use a tool called Toggle, Toggl. I actually started using it to track my own time because I wanted to know where my hours were going, like where am I stuck? And that's a great way to kind of determine where your bottlenecks are too. And everyone on the team does do it and is required to do it. And it's mostly because we'll turn it on when we're when we're working on a particular client's trip, so that we know like XYZ. I've actually done this. A client has been like, not very many clients ask us, but they'll say, hey, how about you like waive our fee? And I'm like, last year we put 37.4 hours onto your trips and you actually only took one of them. No, thank you. It's like really nice to have that amount of data. But so we do track it. So I can go to see, but they also could lie on that tracker, right? So for me, I'm hiring people who I trust. I worked salaried before this. I worked 70 or 80 hours a week or 90 hours a week. Sometimes nobody told me I had to do that, but I'm hiring people who are type A type people who want to do a good job. And I'm very clear on that sort of agreement when they start. Like, this isn't a clock in at 9, clock out at 5 job. This is work whenever you want. Your kids need to go to school, baby is sick, stay home, that's fine. But you don't want to take the day off, but you want to work at night, it's fine with me. We're all in different time zones anyway, for the most part. So it's sort of like the culture, I guess, that we built on the team as well.
Okay. Yeah, I hope that's helpful. And we have a couple more questions on the employer relationship, but we don't have that much time left. We've kind of zoomed through this. We're at 40 minutes already. So I want to get on to client relations. And I know we mentioned fees, and I think we're going to talk about fees a little bit too. But we had a question in the chat, and I think that's a good place to start. Priscilla wants to know about screening clients, and that seems to be important because, again, I think you recognize that time is sort of a super valuable asset for you in your business. Can you talk about screening clients? Once you sort of have them as a client or as a potential sale, I mean, how do you know they're the right client for you to work for? How do you know they fit what you spoke about earlier in the conversation?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, one level higher than that, I will also just say, in terms of like the topic of scaling, I thought about this for a long time because I was hiring people and we were growing, but like the last thing you want to do in a business is grow your revenue at the same rate as your costs and have 20 people who work for you and make the same amount of money as when you had 2 people who work for you. And so I made a decision early on that, or not early on, just in sort of like the last couple of years, and then like really doubled down on it during COVID. In terms of like The other way to grow instead of taking on just more number of trips is to take on higher budget trips. So that has become a pretty important screening thing for us in terms of the types of trips and the types of clients that we want to bring on. So the very first step that I do, like nobody gets through my threshold, my pet, like they can't, no matter how important they are, they can't come unless they fill out our form. And that's for two reasons. A, because they fill out a lot of their own info, so we don't have to hand type it in, saves the team time. There's automation there. But also because one of the big questions at the bottom is what's the budget level? And we keep increasing that and decreasing the lower budget levels. So there's not even like a button to choose less than $5,000. And we're very clear in it that says like, this is our minimum trip spend per day, per person, or whatever it is, right? So some people still fill it out and they have less, and then we talk to them and then they'll increase it. But that's a big initial piece of the screening. And then the person who I mentored who I hired who helps me with sales, she reviews it for if it's a qualified lead or not. If we're not sure, we reach out via email, we chat a little bit more. We're like, hey, not sure if you know, Japan is an extremely expensive destination. So like really for this type of trip, given the types of hotels that you like to stay at, we're going to be looking at sort of a budget like this. Would that be okay? When they're good with that, then we schedule a discover call. So then I do the discover calls. I do the full hour with the client. And usually by the time we do the discover call, the client's pretty well qualified and we bring them on. And then, whether a client's super difficult or not, hopefully I catch them in that call, but not always. So sometimes it just has to be the first trip, and then it's after the first trip, and then it's like, no thanks, sorry, we don't have capacity this time or whatever it is.
Yeah, that is incredible, because we spoke about firing a client a couple of weeks ago, and that was a big concern from a lot of advisors. It was a lot of interactions about firing a client and having to let a client go, and it seems for you to be a thing about how much they're spending, there's their potential spend, and also their potential time they're going to take up for you and your team. And is that right? Like, that's how you sort of are vetting your client list?
Yeah, and I guess because we're going after a very specific type of client, I haven't had to fire very many. But for me, there's another element too. I have to like to work with them, and I think I'm going to be even pickier. Like if I feel any like emotional strife over clients, now that we have way too many people coming in the door than we can take, we're starting to be like really picky about that. The other thing I'm really like, if somebody is ever rude to my team, like do not send a curse word if my team is on the email, or you are out. Like, so like that's why I'm successful, is because of them. Right. So I'm like, protect my team and like their mental health at all cost, and my mental health. And then you have to have like a really good budget and be like not too time consuming.
So we have a question about fees, and again, we don't have that much time, but I think maybe this is what will take up the rest of our time. And then I have a couple more just about your background, because I'm learning an incredible amount on this call. But yeah, what is your philosophy with fees? I know you have a very high end client, and we've had advisors who have maybe a similar kind of client tell me they don't charge fees because the spend's already so high, their commission is covering them. But then I've heard the other end too, that said they won't even talk to people unless they're aware of their fees. So I'm curious, I mean, what's your philosophy with fee planning?
Mm-hmm. Definitely, we charge fees. I think the service that we're offering adds enough of value to people's lives to be considered in addition to their professional management team. So their accountant, their attorney, their wealth advisor, and I pay my accountant, my attorney, my wealth advisor a lot of money. So I think we deserve fees as well. So I've charged fees from the beginning, have no issue with that. I think I saw a question come through. Is it known in advance? It's on my website. For me, because I like sales, right? So salespeople always want to take out all of the friction to the sale. So I don't need to be on the phone being like, okay, so our fee for this trip is X. Yeah. So I've just made mine really standard, right? It's X dollars per week of travel and per number of people. And it's a formula, and I don't have to think about it. So I can just rattle it off at the end of our Discover call. So I know it works for a lot of other people to add and this and that. For me, I just like it to be super simple, and it's high enough then that it covers sort of like, it covers me for sort of like the average out of all the complexities that could happen in a trip. And I would never not charge fees. I think we've all learned in the last 2 years, just because a client's spend is really high, because if they don't take the trip, you've lost money. If you're not counting your time, you are not like running the business like with a financial mind. Like you've lost money because you've put time into it that you could have put time into elsewhere. So for me, I'm unwilling to lose money, and that's why I'm for sure doing fees. And also, I raised my fees 25% from 2020 to 2021, and another 20% from 21 to 2022, and not a single person said anything. it was part of my like philosophy that some of the like earlier clients that we had took on might just self-select out because they didn't want to pay the fees as they've risen, and even the ones with the lower budgets still want it. They've never said a word. So if your clients have a high budget to take a high enough trip, they are used to paying fees for things, and they're probably fine paying your fee.
So I don't want to let the opportunity to go to ask you about sales just because you talk about it, how it's probably your favorite part, or I don't want to I don't want to put words in your mouth, but maybe it's one of your favorite parts of business. It's what you like to do. It's what you think you're really good at. I mean, we have about 70 advisors on the call, and most of them would call themselves salespeople. And I mean, I know we're not going to get into a course right now, but do you have any general tips about sales? Anything you see your contemporaries or other people in the industry doing that maybe you wouldn't do, or maybe you see missed opportunity for them? Anything that you could just shortly share with us now to maybe help people out as they wrap up today?
Yeah, I don't get to see what everybody else does for sales, and I would love to. So feel free to send me your process. But my thing, okay, I mean, I love it because that's like the time when you get to talk to the client, you get to learn all about them, and you get to help them dream about the destinations that they're in. So it's not just because I'm like, cha-ching, I love the sales part. Like I just like the initial advising part of the first call that we do. But I guess I would say, back to the product market fit thing that we talked about earlier, if you don't have a product that the market wants to buy, sales is really hard, and then it really sucks. And when you do, it's not that hard. And I believe as an industry, we have it. Like people need the service that we offer. So sales shouldn't be hard. It's not like, going door to door trying to sell phone books in 2022, right? You don't need to convince people that they need your service. So for me, the sales call is actually like, it's really fun. So I do what we call, like what a lot of Brown advisors do, call the discover call. And most of that call is getting to know the client, asking questions about them. People love to talk about themselves. When they talk about like, oh yeah, my favorite hotel ever was this hotel, I'm like, oh my gosh, love that place. I stayed there last year. Or, oh, you know what? The owner of that hotel was on my podcast. I'll send you the episode. So like I'm listening to them, but I'm also just inserting things in that by the end of the call, they're like, wow, this girl's an expert. She knows so much stuff. And then I'm like, okay, like, this is great. I'd love to help you on your trip. And, here are our fees. This is how it works. Like, I'll send you follow-up email with that kind of info. And I think the person who, like, the sale is easy because they've come to you because they need help, right? So I just don't think it needs to be hard. I guess my only advice would be, have confidence because you're offering something that people need and you're adding a ton of value to people's lives.
Okay. And so we have a question, and this is a quick one. I think we can grab it, and then I have a question for you and maybe some time to wrap up. And I know Saul wants to jump on back here too. But Rashida messaged me about if you do a lot of group. How do you manage closing on potential group participants? Is that a big market for you?
It's not. I've done a couple, and so I won't pretend to be an expert and be able to give you any good advice.
Yeah. So you mentioned your transition to travel at the beginning of this call, and you spoke about hours and things like that. I'm curious, like you started in 2019, we're in 2022 right now. I mean, just looking back on your very short career in travel so far, I mean, what are your takeaways? How do you feel about your decision to get into this industry?
I feel great about it. I mean,
Yeah,
it's been a
nothing
tough
can
couple of
change.
years, but the other thing too that's funny is a lot of my advisor friends who've been doing it for a lot longer, are, complain a lot. But I think I just don't really remember pre-COVID life very well, so I don't have like the good life to compare it to yet. Hopefully, that will come back for all of us. But no, I definitely am happy that I made the jump. I think what I'm trying to do now for myself is remember that I started the company for myself and because it's something that I wanted, and not create a glass prison for myself,
Okay.
like just because you have a business and you tune into this show, like doesn't mean that you need to be growing. Doesn't mean that you have to achieve a certain growth percent. Like decide what you want for your business and then build around that. And so I'm sort of starting to think about that type of stuff as well. Like, what do I want for my life and my lifestyle as well?
And so Sarah, if people want to hear more from you, I know people want to hear more from you, but if they want to hear more from you, I know you mentioned a podcast. Do you want to just give it a plug so whoever wants to subscribe has the opportunity to do so?
Sure. Yeah, it was one of my COVID pet projects. It's now turned into what I think is the top podcast on luxury travel, called Luxury Travel Insider. So that's on, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. And I'm on Instagram at Sarah with an H goes global.
All right. Well, again, I this is it's such an incredibly unique conversation for me to have with you. I really appreciate your time, and I know Saul is still on the call, and he wants to sort of give his goodbyes too. So if Saul, you want to jump back on.
Thanks, Dan. And wow, I mean, really loved listening to this conversation, Sarah. Really inspirational, and thanks for taking the time, affording the time to just share your insights and advice. I think it was incredibly well received. So I also want to say thank you for having explored Journeys On. It was such a pleasure being here with everybody today, and look forward to further engaging with all of our amazing advisors that tuned in. And so I'll turn it back over to you. Thanks, Dan.
Yeah. So again, thanks to everyone for joining us today. Again, Sarah, thank you so much. I could not ask for more out of your time this week. Hopefully, I'll bump into you down the road. For everyone who wants to rewatch this, we're going to be hosting it. It should be available later today on our YouTube, and if not, it'll be there forever, hosted there. So please drop on, subscribe on that page if you like, and yeah, hope everyone has a great rest of your week and a great weekend, and I hope to see everyone very soon.
Thanks, Dan.
Thank you.